So, anyways, I was reading a blog post a couple of days ago, recently, don't remember exactly when, and this blog post was an opinion about frameworks versus libraries. And the author of this post was rather adamant that frameworks are pretty much the devil. The author just absolutely did not like frameworks at all for a lot of reasons that they stated. And generally, being a library kind of person, I looked at the post and I thought, oh, hey, this will be interesting. Why don't I read this? And as I read through the post, it really struck a nerve with me in a very bad way. The opinions that this person was espousing were almost dangerous. Not really dangerous, but just very misguided. And the things that they were saying about why frameworks were bad kind of made me think, maybe this person hasn't had a lot of good experience with frameworks, hasn't had a lot of experience with frameworks at all. I mean, I don't really know for sure. I don't know anything about this person. It was just some random blog post that I ran across. But the whole thing got me thinking, what are the reasons I like libraries versus frameworks? And that question kind of led me down the path of, well, is libraries versus frameworks even the right question? And ultimately, I don't think it is. I don't think frameworks versus libraries is the discussion that we should be having at all. I mean, I've been having this discussion with myself and with teammates and projects and companies for years now. And I've come to the conclusion that this is the wrong discussion to be having. Instead of looking at frameworks versus libraries, we should be asking which framework, which libraries, and why, and what value and what purpose that framework or library serves in a particular case. What it really comes down to is, where's the business value that our team and our project and our situation needs? Are we going to be able to support this framework or library? Is this framework or library going to get us to the goal, get us down the path as quickly as we need to, with as much support and long-term everything that we need? It's not so much about, do I like Backbone versus Ember? It's who on the team can train us in Backbone or Ember. It's, why should I use Rails versus Express? Not really so much that from a technical perspective, but from the perspective of, does our team already know Rails? Does our team already know Express.js and Node really well? Where is the team comfortable, and what will the team be able to do to support these decisions long term? It's a far more important discussion to have than should we use frameworks or should we use libraries. The other conclusion that I kind of came to is that ultimately, even if we choose libraries at the outset of an application development process, we end up with a framework anyways. Now, as somebody that has built countless apps with Backbone.js and now with Node.js, and constantly putting in little libraries that I like to use in these apps on both the front end and the back end, I can guarantee you, I can tell you with certainty, that every one of these apps that I've built with libraries has resulted in a custom one-off framework for that given application. And I'm okay with that. Personally, I like to build things that way. I prefer the choice that I get when using libraries. I prefer to be able to construct the application-specific framework as needed. Because there are often times when I do want a specific feature piece of functionality that a library will give me. And yeah, sure, I could probably get the same thing out of frameworks, but I don't want all of what a framework brings in all the time. There are other times, though, and plenty of times in my history where I've used very large frameworks. I've used Ruby on Rails. I've looked at Django. I've looked at the Sales.js a tiny little bit, not a whole lot. I've looked at, what's the big PHP one? Laravel. I've looked at a lot of frameworks and used a lot of frameworks over the years, and I really like these frameworks for what they do. I don't always want all the features that these frameworks bring in. Sometimes it does make sense, especially when I'm on a team that is more comfortable with these frameworks, but it's not always the right decision for me and my projects. So the next time you get into a discussion where you're arguing libraries versus frameworks, or somebody on your team or in your company is, try to redirect that discussion not to be around frameworks versus libraries, but around which framework and which library and why. And what is your team comfortable with? And what are they willing to support? And what are they willing to work with? What are they comfortable with? What do they have experience with? These are going to be far more valuable questions to ask than frameworks versus libraries.